Protesters all over the world are bringing down statues of colonial figures in the wake of widespread demonstrations demanding justice for George Floyd. In Europe, several statues were either toppled or defaced as the concerned personality represented a racist idea and enforced their empire's vicious policies that left colonies in utter despair. The trend of pulling down statues comes after the recent incident where anti-racism protesters in England drowned the statue of Edward Colston, a 17th century slave trader who is believed to have transported 80,000 men to the Americas. Soon after the events in Bristol and Minneapolis, protesters all around the world are bringing down statues of slave traders, imperialists and men who are said to have no regard for racial equality. In London, anti-racism protesters removed the statue of 18th century slave trader Robert Milligan. The incident occurred after the protests surrounding George Floyd's case triggered a debate on how Britain looks at its own colonial past. In response to the ongoing protests, London Mayor Sadiq Khan has also ordered a review of statues and street names across London. Earlier, protesters in Bristol also brought down 2 statues of colonials, demanding racial justice for all. In Oxford, more than 1,000 protesters came together demanding the removal of a statue of 19th century British colonialist Cecil Rhodes. Given his controversial image, Rhodes was deployed in southern Africa, who was known for looting money from people and exploiting miners for gold and diamonds. Infamous for his imperialist wars, racial segregation and beliefs leading to apartheid, the protesters have demanded immediate removal of the statue. Joining us on this broadcast is WION's London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark. Mandy, the death of George Floyd has sparked a global movement, isn't it, against racism, and it has spread in the UK as well. And now questions are being raised about UK's own colonial past and history of slave trade as well, isn't it? Questions have even been raised over Winston Churchill himself. Could you give us an update about the latest situation in the UK?
Absolutely, and that's the biggest question here is how Britain looks at its own history and who they celebrate and who they don't. Winston Churchill is in Parliament Square, and he had his monument defaced twice this week because the words he said when he was alive are deemed racist, and it really has caused Britain to look again at itself. Around 60 other monuments linked to slavery are now being re-examined across the country, and leaders from across the country are willing to look at it and take down any that deemed offensive. It said in many ways it's a question, starting that conversation again about how they view their past and how they view their history and what they celebrate and what they shouldn't celebrate.
Right, Mandy, has this sparked a new debate? Has this sparked a new outlook among Britishers to look at their own history? Was this even part of the debate before the George Floyd incident?
There had been some conversation. Of course, Oriel College in Oxford, where you spoke about Cecil Rhodes, they already had 4 years ago calls to pull down that statue, and they said it was a part of their history and refused. Now, so far they're still refusing, but they might look again. However, it has sparked also, unfortunately, counter-protests where we are seeing people from the far right, white supremacists who are coming to protect monuments that they feel are under threat. So we can expect possibly violent clashes this weekend when both sides are due to protest. So it has sparked another side to Britain as well. But the conversation about how they look at their colonial past is beginning to re-emerge, how they look at educating and how they cover that in schools as well.
Mandy Clark, thank you so much for joining us live from UK. Certainly George Floyd's death has sparked the world look back at its own self and see how the world is dealing towards the sensitive issue of racial discrimination.